Well, it has been quite the day in Alberta politics. 9 members, including the leader of the opposition party, the Wild Rose Party, crossed the floor to join the Tories. Alberta Premier Jim Prentice spoke to reporters about the move.
So today the PC caucus welcomes the leader of the Wild Rose, Danielle Smith, and many key members of her team to our caucus. These MLAs are both wanted and needed in our government caucus as part of our team. Alberta is stronger today with these committed Albertans working together.
Aaron Collins is with CBC in Calgary. He joins me now. Aaron, I have heard of opposition members crossing the floor, but 9 at once, including the party leader. Why now?
Well, I think to understand why now, Sarah, you have to understand a little bit about where the Wild Rose Party came from. And essentially, you know, when you have one conservative party in power for 40 years, some people within that organization get disillusioned. And that's the origin of the Wild Rose Party. Disillusioned Conservative Party members who left to form their own party, feeling that the Progressive Conservatives had become entitled and sort of, you know, weren't conservative enough. Now, there was a lot of ammunition for this movement when Alison Redford was the premier here. That started to change with Jim Prentice coming into power, and essentially he started knocking peg by peg away from the Wild Rose you know, sort of platform, undermining them. That's led to some by-election losses and some previous defections. That leads us here to today, where we hear from the former Wild Rose leader Danielle Smith essentially saying she's joining Jim Prentice because Jim Prentice is basically co-opting the Wild Rose platform. Here's what she had to say.
Values and principles like balancing the budget, eliminating wasteful spending, respecting property rights, decentralizing decision-making, and clean ethical government. Over the course of the last several months, I've become more and more convinced that these are values I share with Premier Prentice. Past premiers have merely paid lip service to these issues, saying the right things and then doing the opposite. But Premier Prentice has shown me and my caucus that he is different.
So it's that difference that's attracted Danielle Smith and her 8 colleagues to cross the floor and I suppose to attract those disgruntled Conservatives back into the Progressive Conservative fold.
Aaron, the Alberta Conservatives have been in power in that province for more than 40 years. A lot of big moments in that time, but this is a big deal too.
It's huge, and it's really unprecedented. I've been racking my brain and you know, studied political science, and I can't think of a time in following government where something like this has happened, where an opposition party or a big chunk of it has crossed the floor to join the government. Now, obviously, this has some big impacts here. It does unify the Conservative movement here in Alberta. It also potentially opens up the opportunity for maybe some centrist or center-left parties to rise to take over some of those centrist voters who gravitated towards the Progressive Conservatives to oppose Wild Rose. At the end of the day, though, the question has to be asked, you know, what kind of value is there, again, in consolidating Conservative power, 72 of 87 MLAs in the legislature? What does this mean for democracy in Canada's wealthiest province?
Interesting times. Thanks, Aaron. That's Aaron Collins, CBC in Calgary.